when when they go there. Of course, Lakshadweep is also very beautiful, but I'd like to say that thanks to that understanding, he has basically welcomed President Muizu's turnaround in relations with India. Muizu came to power on a anti-India slogan: "Get rid of India, get rid of India. We don't want India." He came to power on that slogan, and now the same person is inviting the Prime Minister of India, no less, for 60th anniversary celebration. It's a very, very important celebration for any country in the Maldives. So I think it shows the remarkable progress that has been made as a result of our diplomacy and as a result of the common sense of the Maldivian leadership. And I welcome this move on the part of President Muizu. It will be to the benefit of his people, and I welcome his commitment to the benefit of his people. And I really am happy about the very warm welcome that Prime Minister Modi has received in the Maldives. A very warm welcome indeed. Thank you.
Absolutely. Commander Bhushan Dewan, we're getting those visuals on our screens of the Independence Day celebrations, the ceremony that is ongoing right now in Malé. We saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi as the chief guest. There was a National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, who was also present. Right now, the national anthem of Maldives being played on the grounds where the celebrations are taking place. There were tanks that are a number of military forces that are present over there. Of course, there is this entire military parade that had taken place before the national anthem of Maldives being played out. Okay, Commander Bhushan, then interesting enough, we have so many points of commonality between Maldives and India, and I cannot but further emphasize that another neighboring country and island nation which had invited Prime Minister Modi just a few months ago for its Independence Day celebrations, and that was Sri Lanka as well. That was Sri Lanka, and you know, the highest civilian honor that was presented to Prime Minister Narendra Modi by the Sri Lankan President. Again, points of commonality over there about the temporary rift that had been witnessed between India and Sri Lanka. And again we saw that China was trying to build its presence by way of naval bases, taking over economic zones, has not really played out the way China and Sri Lanka would have wanted to. Again, Sri Lanka then trying to rebuild its prosperous ties with India, and to a large extent those have been healed, those have been repaired. Unfortunately, in Bangladesh, we see quite the turmoil, which is not to India's benefit. What do you have to say about India and its relationship with the subcontinent, and Chinese intervention that has left a sour taste between India and its immediate neighbors?
Megha, China is bound to do these things, but in the overall perspective, as a macro trend, if you see, any country, and especially a large country like India, has always a greater difficulty maintaining good relations with neighbors. Perforce, neighbors are smaller, so they feel that there is a sense of insecurity in any case. You try to help them out too much, they feel you are patronizing us. Remain away from them, aloof from them, whether Nepal or whatever, you say, no, you're a big brotherly, you're aloof, you think you're a big guy. Even though they may be dependent. You know, the diplomacy, to my mind, with other countries which are far away from any country like India versus diplomacy with nearby neighbors, is a different ball game altogether. Though respected ambassador will put a different perspective to this. But I also want to tell you, it is much more challenging really. But having said this, I mean, I was saying in the earlier bite with you that, you know, we have a lot of things to offer to Maldives. But let me tell you, you know, Maldives, $8 billion GDP, about 1/3 or 1/4 comes from tourism. More than 1/4, less than 1/3. Now, out of that, about $2.5 billion or $2,500 million, you know that Indian tourists are contributing just $141 million per year, which is just 6%, 7%. So it's not a huge thing. I must tell you that the leverage that we have, we have to be cautious how much leverage do we have. It's all right to see in absolute numbers, India, 1 lakh tourists, now it becomes 50,000 tourists. I'm giving an example. So that is okay. But in the overall perspective of Maldives economy, it is not a huge difference to my mind. Secondly, surprisingly, per capita GDP of India is roughly $3,000. This is a USD. And their GDP per capita is around 12,000 USD. And no wonder, I mean, if you go to Maldives, I mean, I found when I went there, we tend to think, oh, I'm from India, you know, who are these guys, chota mota guys? It's not that. There are a lot of pride in themselves. I could see it. So the point I'm making is I'm sure diplomats will be much more conscious of this compared to what I'm saying. That, you know, we just cannot think that, you know, oh, small country, anything, where will they go? Perhaps they have to come to us. So we have to really mollycoddle them to my point, to my mind,
Okay.
because sensitivity is very high.
Okay.
And same is to Nepal, Bangladesh, everywhere.
Okay, Gautam Mukherjee, this point particularly, you know, quite a complaint that these countries surrounding India in the subcontinent, the smaller countries, have that India seems to be playing the quote-unquote big brotherly role, but somehow these countries have very quietly accepted China's you know, benefactor role without question. How do we see geopolitics playing out in the subcontinent?
Well, I think earlier the idea was that China was so 5 times bigger than India in terms of its economy, and therefore it was only second to the United States. There was a possibility this was often part of the propaganda that they would overtake America and become the #1 economy and dominate the world, not only just Asia, but the whole world. This was the thinking. Now, China is growing at around 4% at best. It is not enough. It needs 8% growth to prevent unrest in its own country. India, on the other hand, has the highest rate of growth in the world. It's growing at upwards of 6.5%, and is rapidly going on to become the third largest economy. Now, in terms of purchase power parity, which cannot be ignored, 50,000 rupees in India buys as much as $3,500 in the United States. So our purchase power parity position is already #3, and in purchase power parity terms, we're at 13 trillion and not at 4 trillion in absolute GDP terms. So India is unstoppable, and a lot of these small countries around us who've gotten away with this sort of chip on your shoulder type of behavior, that you are dominating us, you are big, you think you're too big, etc., can think what they like. We are going to chug along and go ahead, and the world is acknowledging that fact, and these people can ignore us or be hostile to us at their own peril. The only worry we really have is China, because China has a substantial capacity to do us damage and is constantly working on doing India as much damage as it can in diplomacy, in economics. At the same time, it is saying to us, it's wonderful that way. It keeps a knife out all the time to stab us. At the same time, says, why don't we normalize relationships? And we are now also learning the game, and we are also normalizing to some extent and being wary in equal measure.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Mukherjee has just joined me on the telecast. Ambassador, the Independence Day ceremony is taking place right now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the chief guest. He is also present over there along with his entourage. Again, the big significance of this visit, a third one being made by the Prime Minister since he came to power.
There is a particular significance to this visit because the present head of state of the Maldivian government was earlier very hostile to India and overtly pro-Chinese. In fact, he went to the extent of asking India, if you recall, Megha, when he first took over, he asked Indians to withdraw any of their assets that they had placed in Maldives to assist the Maldivian government to cope with, for example, emergency situations, etc., etc. From that to come to where we are today is a 180-degree change for them. And I would completely agree with Gautam that we have demonstrated as India that we are unstoppable. And the Maldives had better understand that without India, it can go nowhere. Moreover, is China such a benevolent partner to smaller countries? Not at all. We have seen how the Chinese behave with very small countries. We have seen the manner in which they behaved during the Sri Lankan financial crisis. It was India that bailed out Sri Lanka, if you recall. You would also remember that where, as far as Pakistan is concerned, they have virtually forced Pakistan to become a client state. They have virtually taken over parts of Pakistan as if it belongs to China. It's not a formal annexation, but for all practical purposes, there are parts of Pakistan where Pakistan has lost sovereignty over these areas to China. So under those circumstances, and Maldives being a very small country, with its strategic location where it is situated, it is extremely beneficial for Maldives to have a close relationship, a partnership with India. And similarly, it is very important for India and for the Quad to have Maldives squarely on the side of the Quad and squarely on the side of those who want a rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific, because in a rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific, we do need to have strategic assets in the Indo-Pacific. And Maldives earlier used to be considered by India as a strategic asset, as a sovereign country, but as a strategic asset for international peace and security. That has come about despite, I was just reading the most hostile and disgusting remark made by the so-called brother-in-law of the head of state of Maldives. But as the foreign secretary said, we can live with such remarks. It makes no difference to us. I would repeat what Gautam said. India is unstoppable, and everybody today recognizes that India is unstoppable. Megha.
Jaijit is also on the show with me. And Jaijit, in terms of the economic relevance and more importantly for Maldives than it is for India, India has carried forward the tradition of providing soft loans for developmental projects, maritime projects, infrastructure, health, education. These all have benefited Maldives for several decades now, and they continue to do so because India has its policy of neighborhood first well defined, and irrespective of any hiccups that come between India and its neighbors, it continues to have these hiccups, these hindrances do not end up faltering the large scale foundational level relationship between India and Maldives, or for that matter any of the other countries in the subcontinent with which India shares these cordial relationship that has lasted for decades together.
Absolutely right. And the responsibility for that cordial relationship, or the reason for the cordial relationship, turns out to be India.
Yeah.
As you see from an economic perspective, Maldives is less than a rounding of error for India from a economic perspective. But it's important that we maintain friendly relationships, and that's a tradition. And India has acted in a very responsible manner. So I think hats off and kudos to the absolute fine diplomacy that India has played by being responsible. If you look at any other relationship, not just China, even if you look at US, it has tried to behave in a manner which is not really a moral way of dealing with other countries. They have used their power in an overt manner, in a obnoxious manner, to put it in the right words. Whereas, in spite of all the provocations that India had, especially in terms of Maldives, the Indian government behaved extremely responsibly. And I mean provocations from both the Maldivian side as well as the Indian social media side, where a lot of people said, let's take this step and let's take that step. But the government behaved in a very responsible manner, and we see the outcome of it, which is beneficial for both Maldives and for India. Obviously, Maldivian economy is significantly dependent on India. It's not just solely dependent on India, but significantly dependent. And it is up to India to make sure that they do not misuse that dependence. They strengthen Mauritius as a nation, and India continues to be the first responder to the needs of Mauritius, be it military requirements, be it water requirements, COVID requirements, and so on and so forth. And so the prism of the relationship is not just economic, and but it's multidimensional, because from India's side, the economic relationship is not something very significant, but it's a multiple other dimensions which are significant, and that's what has really played out.
Commander Bhushan, again talking about the relation that has been forged very carefully, painstakingly, a number of these bilateral visits that have been made by the foreign ministers of both the countries, by the defense ministers of both the countries. Of course, I mentioned about Prime Minister Modi in the past, Indira Gandhi, the former Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, the former Prime Minister, Nehru. They all have painstakingly built the foundations of what India and Maldives diplomatic ties look like today. Where does the future lie, and what more can be done to further concretize it?
Megha, as I mentioned earlier in your telecast now, a short while back, I think the worst in Indo-Maldives relations is behind us now, I feel. Both parties have realized that we are thrown in together, and we are the ones, we have to live together more closely than each other, than compared to Maldives with China or Maldives with anybody else. This is a very big realization, and we also realize that there's only one Maldives, and we have to be critical that they remain with us totally. So this kind of understanding, whether out of compulsion or out of realization, whatever it is, I think this will take us, both the countries, going forward, strengthening and deepening our bonds. What I can see that things like of course visa-free arrivals and those things are already there, but I still feel that I'm a bit concerned, though Professor Nalapat mentioned that the radical Islam is not taking foothold, at least among young people. I don't know. My observation was that it is the young people actually who seem to be more, aggressive about this, taking to aggressive Islam. I found it. I mean, this is from my personal observation. I could be totally wrong. No authentic data, anecdotal data. So the point I'm making is, we really have to have deepen our cultural ties also. There are the people, it's well known, the Maldivians are actually originally from Kerala. But that way, whole Indonesia, the whole Southeast Asia is all from Indians, but India origin. But that doesn't mean that they are almost supporting us. Another compulsion. To my mind, India-Maldives relationship can perhaps become a model, whether it is Bangladesh, before Bangladesh, before Sri Lanka, before being in presence of these countries, I think. Because it's a small country, we are very close to each other, and there are a lot of things going forward. So I think there is a lot of scope for it to ramp up the relationship in a much better fashion, provided both sides make an effort. I think India also needs to go more than half the way. So we may be a big economy, we are in any case bigger, but I think we need to really come closer to them. So there's no way that China can try to detract from closeness, the natural bonding, natural closeness, economic closeness also between India and Maldives.
Okay. All right. Coming back to you, Professor Nalapat, about how our strategic maritime interests are intertwined with Maldives, and particularly with regards to the very strategic position, that topographical position that Maldives has. We had very recently, amidst these frictional ties between Maldives in the last few months, last entire year, have ended up building a very strategic naval base in Minicoy. This is amidst the speculation that has been doing the rounds that China also has set its ties on building a military setup, a military base in Maldives, although it's not yet been built. Is there any way India can deter Maldives from accepting such kind of investments by the Chinese into its territory?
Yeah, Megha, I'd like to point out the example of Sri Lanka, where they developed an airport and a port in the south, and it was completely became a ghost airport and a ghost port. There was no traffic because the traffic used to come from India, and India obviously did not go there. Indian vessels did not go there, as they say. They did not go there. So the reality situation is that yes, the youth have been attracted to radical ideologies, but my view is that more and more youth are coming to the opinion, correct, in that radical ideology only leads to poverty and leads to a bad life, and finally leads to a kind of disruption we are seeing in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iran, and other locations wherever radicals have gained a foothold, including our neighbor Pakistan, where you got a huge amount of radicalism. At the same time, you got the country is now slowly coming apart. So I'd like to point out that I am optimistic about it, about the youth also waking up to that reality, and I find more and more youth. Maldives actually very close to the Indian coast, and the people, they come and go, and they're completely changing their views about radicalism, and mainly because of the economic impact which they recognize. Now, regarding China, I mean, I've been to Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, all these, ASEAN countries, and in every one of them, whether you're in the if you're in a hotel elevator, or you are in one of the dining rooms, and my friends used to say, "Oh, those are mainland Chinese." I say, "How do you know? They could be Taiwanese, they could be Singaporean." They said, "No, the mainland Chinese behave in a very bullying, obnoxious fashion." And that's the difference between Indians and Chinese. That mainland Chinese behave in smaller countries in a very obnoxious fashion. So that even, for example, in Nepal, the Chinese are passing themselves off as Taiwanese, because the Nepalis just don't like Chinese because they are bullying behavior. Bullying never works, Megha, except in the short run. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I had raised just a few minutes ago, that on one hand, when all these smaller nations in the subcontinent raise a hue and cry that India has been taking this quote unquote big brotherly position, how is it that they have been, even if it is in the short term, been very accepting of the bullying behavior of China without any questions asked? Is it because they were being given billions of dollars, and although it may have been a debt which they have never been able to return, but kept quiet? Yes, Professor Nalapat,
Yeah, I just want to say the Chinese believe in elite capture. Elite capture. They don't, elite capture is very, very different, quite frankly, from the population in general. They capture elites and they rule through elites, just as the CCP leadership itself has become an elite, and frankly an elite that is descendants pass on that status to their children, and then the children to their children, and so on. So the reality is that as a consequence, after about 2 or 3 generations of privilege, you become a bully by nature. I think Indians generally, there are of course unfortunate examples, are not bullies. And as far as the Chinese are concerned, yes, they go by a rules-based economy. I mean, they go by rules-based international order, but the rules are what the Chinese set. and any rule that is not what the Chinese said is not accepted to them. Look at the South China Sea, what they're doing. I mean, the rules are set by the international organizations. No, not acceptable. The only Chinese rules acceptable. So all this, frankly, becomes very clear to the people of different countries. So I think where India has succeeded is precisely in people-to-people connect. And I think where people-to-people connect is concerned, very strong bonds have been used. And if you remember, Prime Minister Modi always makes it a point to meet the diaspora and to meet and to mingle and interact with them, because he understands the importance of the diaspora being, in a sense, ambassadors of India, and that is where people-to-people connect of India with its neighbors is so important. You go to any of these countries and you see the difference between the way Indians behave and between the way the mainland Chinese behave. Thank you.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I said. How many times have you seen Xi Jinping visiting Maldives versus the relationship that has been painstakingly built by India with Maldives or any of its countries in the subcontinent? And then the neighborhood first policy is clearly very visible. By the way of acts, assistance, military support, administrational support, financial support, all sorts of support, which China treats Maldives and all of these smaller nations as a very transactional, with a very transactional approach, which is something that these nations realize as well. Ambassador Mukherjee, again a question about the maritime infrastructure. How do you think India can further build this in the Indian Ocean region, particularly in and around Maldives? Because at the end of the day, strategic position of Maldives is what is of most importance for India to benefit from.
No, Megha. The strategic position of Maldives is not the most important. What is most important is the strategic reliability of a strategic ally. Maldives is not a reliable strategic partner. It is not a reliable strategic asset. That is very clear from the manner in which the present head of government of Maldives behaved initially with India. Under those circumstances, the kind of hopes and aspirations that India and India's political leadership had earlier had about the Maldives, about its strategic position, about its utility in the event of a threat to the rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific, etc., it was clear that an unreliable strategic ally that can go either way, depending on how it's placed at a particular point of time. Today it is bankrupt. Today it understands that India can bail it out much better than China, etc. So today it's behaving in a particular way. It is for that reason that many of us looked inwards. We looked at Andaman. We looked at Andaman Nicobar Islands. We've always looked at Mauritius. I think it was Professor Nalapat or one of my co-panelists who spoke about it. In Mauritius, for instance, is a reliable strategic partner. In Mauritius, for decades, our Navy has patrolled the waters of Mauritius. Mauritius, yes, but Mauritius is too close to Africa. The strategic positioning of Maldives is such that if you look around, India would have to look at a strategic ally that is reliable, that is placed in a similar convenient geographical location for India, but which is not Maldives. Okay. 100% is not Maldives. We cannot depend upon Maldives.
Okay, what do you have to say about that, Jayjeet? Then are we now at this point of time having faced such a setback from Maldives, which was seen never before? Should be more cautious? Should we consider Maldives as a fair weather ally? And therefore, I mean, yes, it makes complete sense to not put our eggs in the same basket, and therefore, the establishment of naval bases and further fortifying them in Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar is all the more important. But are we to say to discard Maldives as a not so reliable ally in the future, if need be?
Well, there is no black and white in geopolitics or geoeconomics for that matter. The position and the situation keeps changing. We have had our fair share of issues with even Nepal. That doesn't mean we write off or we embrace. It's for us to manage how we behave, and we have been consistent toward all our neighbors. We want them to prosper, we want them to strengthen, and we would like to have good neighborly relationships, and we would expect a reciprocity. And there have been mix-ups in terms of how our social media reacts, how different voices come in, how even social media has been weaponized. If you look at the way Get Out India campaign was conducted in Sri Lanka, it was similar to a similar campaign that was conducted, in Maldives. It was similar to how it was conducted in Sri Lanka, where suddenly the people became anti-India for no particular reason except that the media and the social media was poisoning the minds. The same format was copied into Maldives. A similar format was copied into Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. This game of big powers trying to pollute the neighbors of India will continue. It will be a forever game.
Yeah.
That does not mean that we leave our responsibility towards our neighbors, or we walk away from those relationships.
Fair enough. Commander Bhushan, what's your view on this? Do we at this point of time be skeptical in completely believing what Muizu and Maldives at this point of time are portraying? Again, talking about it's at the end of the day China and India in South Asia and East Asia, and therefore it is also a battle of powers at play.
2-3 points come to my mind. Reagan used to say during strategic arms limitation talks, SALT talks for Russia, trust, but verify. So we cannot trust also blindly, and we need not doubt them also blindly. As Vajpayee used to say, your neighbors are given, you just can't change them. Pakistan is here, they'll be always here. China is here, or Northeast, they'll always be here. So we must, on the other hand, try to, we have every reason and every wherewithal to try to convert Maldives as our closest ally. To my mind, writing off will not pay dividends at all. Secondly, I want to tell you, to substantiate your point, how roughly and arrogantly, and Professor Nalapat also mentioned, I've worked in Indonesia 2-3 years, and when the Chinese companies build roads in Zanzibar, I must tell you, they get their small time labor also from Chinese. So the locals don't benefit. I was senior vice president of Adani Port. Adani was trying to set up a power plant. I had a chance to visit about 10-15 miles from the port, because there's a coal coming in by the conveyor belt, and I went there. I must tell you, there's a full colony of Chinese technicians. Small, minor electricians also come from China. So how much anti-feeling Chinese would be generating against the common man there? But your point, still, despite arrogant behavior of Chinese and these economical hardships for the locals and trying to capture the territory, all those, notwithstanding, still China seems to be making headway. To my mind, the answer is, you see, India is known by Prophet is never honored his own country. Nepal, South, they're all South Asian brothers, neighbors. They have seen Indians many times. So they have fixed ideas now. Chinese are new. For Nepalis also, for Malay citizens also, everybody. And they are trying to learn, they're learning about it. So they're tolerating them. In Pakistan also, how arrogantly Chinese behave, they're killing, sometimes doing murders also.
Okay.
And the military regime is helping them. So I think it will take time for the Chinese to be exposed and India's true nature showing up to our favor.
Okay, Professor Nalapa, then a quick question about how China has been increasing its influence in the subcontinent, but when we take in contrast, India perhaps has not been as prominent in the ongoings of ASEAN nations. I don't think India has made a clear-cut statement in the war, in the clashes that are taking place between Cambodia and Thailand. if there are issues with regards to Philippines and the friction that Philippines faces with China. There are no strong comments or clear-cut comments that come from India, but China has not withheld its point of view to be made public and heard across the globe when it comes to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, even Maldives.
Look, I'd like to say that whether it's Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, for example, a very important country, and frankly, a very important partner, present and future for India, where all these countries are concerned, quite frankly. Please understand one thing, Megha. This is not a contest limited to the Indian Ocean or the Indo-Pacific, but to the whole world. The Chinese have extended themselves throughout the world, and slowly, whether it's the Panama Canal, whether it's now the Malacca Strait, they're being challenged. They're being challenged very actively in South China Sea by freedom of navigation operations by several countries. They've been challenged across the Taiwan Straits. They've been challenged in South America. They've been challenged in Africa. By the way, Indian companies are giving them a very stiff challenge in Africa. And so I'd like to say this is a worldwide situation that's taking place. And therefore, let me point out something that the commander would be much more expert in, which is basically escalation dominance, the concept of escalation dominance in military theory, that the country that can escalate the conflict has got the upper hand. Russia, for example, in Ukraine, and certainly where escalation is concerned, the Chinese don't have the upper hand, but the confluence of democracies have the upper hand. So yes, I'm sorry, I do remain optimistic. I continue to remain optimistic because I'm very convinced that the escalation dominance factor is working in favor of the democracies. And after all, democracy is a much better system than authoritarianism. And I mean, if you haven't been to authoritarian countries and been living in a democracy, I can tell you that. So Megha, I'm optimistic. This is a worldwide contest. India is involved in the whole world. Under Prime Minister Modi, the whole world has now been co-opted by him, whether it's Latin America, whether it is Europe, whether it's Africa, whether it is other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. He has worked all over there. And from that point of view, I would like to say, I think that we will see in the years ahead that the advantage will clearly be with the democracies. And what we're seeing in Maldives is an example of that. And there's no question that it is a significant breakthrough to have a person who came to power on a Remove India platform, welcoming the Prime Minister of India to 60th independence celebration.
Right.
It's a tribute to the Prime Minister, tribute to External Affairs Ministry, which basically responds very well to what he says, come by Minister Jaishankar. So let's not downplay significance of this. There is far more than simply a formality in inviting a distinguished guest, especially India, in a context where this situation of the Cold War 2.0 with China is raging throughout the world. It's not a small gesture by the Maldives, and I'm glad President Muizu has done it, and I'm very glad Prime Minister Modi has let bygones be bygones and behaved in a very friendly manner towards people whom I've always regarded as very friendly on the occasions I met them, the Maldivians. Thank you.
Okay, on that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, but those are visuals on your screens of this beautiful, vibrant ceremony celebrating the 60th year of independence for Maldives taking place. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the chief guest. I leave you with those beautiful dances and performances by the Maldivians at the ceremony. Thanks for watching Newsx.
दिवे राज्य के मिनिमम कमा फसदोल सहर फुरे फखरुवरी मिनिमम दुह के मुनासिबत का बेबी मी रस्मियात मिया हिसाबों निमुने मिनिमम दुह के उफल का बैवर देवी कमटका दिवे राज्य के इज्जत रईस जमहूरिया डॉक्टर मोहम्मद मुइज के देखमदुन नशा इंडिया के बोर्ड वजीर हिज एक्सेलेंसी श्री नरेंद्र मोदी अशा रईस जमहूरिया के नाब अल उस्ताद हुसैन मोहम्मद लतीफ के इतुरों वडन तिब्बेवी एमहा बेफरुना वरंग इखलास तेर कमाए को शुक्र दनवा मिनिमम दुह के मुनासिबत का बेवी मी उफावेरी हेविकमा कुलियोर के मैदानी हरकत का वडन दिविकमटका तिय एमहा बेफरुना दिवेहि बहा सगाफता तरीका बेह वजारा के नमका वरंग इखलास तेर कमाए को शुक्र दनवा अदिवे सेफहर मिनिमम दुह के हेव इदमा तहनिया तिय हुरिहा बेफरुना अरिस कुरंग बाचवेरी दुह कंगेदं वस्सलाम अलैकुम.
With this last item, the ceremony comes to an end. As the ceremony comes to an end, I would like to respectfully thank His Excellency, the President Dr. Mohammad Muizzu and First Lady Madam Sajida Mohammed for joining us to celebrate the 60 years of independence of the Maldives. I would also like to respectfully thank His Excellency, Prime Minister of the Republic of India, Shri Narendra Modi, for joining all of us to celebrate this occasion. Thank you, Vice President Hussain Mohammad Latif, for joining with us today. The Ministry of Divehi Language, Culture and Heritage thanks you for joining us on this joyous occasion, celebrating 60 years of independence of the Republic of Maldives. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
ate aumen tibe punaha me deme mi genestini aumen ge fahurveri miniman duhu ke munasabatu ka jumhuri maidanu ka khuriyadiya maidani harakat adhe vikama kulbaru ke harakat ade mi harakat شرف خدوی رئیس جمهوریه دکتر محمد مویز के देखमदो ade miniman duhu ke mi hevikam ge khasa harakat ka mi बंदवाद बुम का mi बड़ा गति खास मेहमान के हैसियतुं इंडिया के बोर्ड वजीर नरेंद्र मोदी अति रईस जमहूरिया के फरमान दावत का दतुर फुल के गतुका बोर्ड वजीर मोदी राज्य क्रम के दबा दतुर फुल में हामी वनी नो मखंग असफा अति इमफान में वनी दिवे राज्य के फहुरवेरी मिनिमम दुह के मुनासिबत का खोरिया के इंडिया में हरकत के खास मेहमान गतुका बैन बड़ा के में हरकत बलवा दवाफा में आए के इमफान के दतुर फुल में हामी वनी नो मखंग असफा अनि अति इमफान दिन बड़ा करनवानी एयरपोर्ट इमफान पूरा बड़ा करनवान अदर रईस जमहूरिया डॉक्टर मोहम्मद मुइज
कार इंश्योरेंस डन.
पॉलिसी बाजार से कराया?
नहीं.
तो तू जिब्रा नहीं हो सकता. कार नई हो या पुरानी, पॉलिसी बाजार पे कंपेयर करके खरीदो और 30,000 तक बचाओ. इसलिए तू जिब्रा तो नहीं है, तू है
गधा.
काइंड ऑफ.
अगर आप बनना चाहते हैं एंकर या फिर आप में है जुनून एक तेज तर्रार न्यूज रिपोर्टर बनने का, तो आप ज्वाइन करें ITV और इंडिया न्यूज़ का मीडिया स्कूल. ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का कोर्स आपको मौका देता है देश के दिग्गज एंकर्स के साथ काम करने का. ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में आप बेहद नजदीकी से देख पाएंगे किस तरह से ITV नेटवर्क के दिग्गज पत्रकारों की टीम दिन रात खबरों पर काम करती है. इस कोर्स के दौरान आप सीखेंगे एंकरिंग की एक एक बारीकी उन एंकर्स के साथ जो देश को रखते हैं हर खबर से बाखबर. ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का ये कोर्स आपके एंकरिंग स्किल्स को करेगा इतना सशक्त, मजबूत, जिससे आप बनेंगे पत्रकारिता की दुनिया का वो चमकता चेहरा जो दुनिया देखेगी और पसंद करेगी।
स्माइल।
ना 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 ना, गलत समझ रहे हैं आप, ये ज़ीब्रा नहीं है।
एक्सक्यूज मी।
जब कोई पॉलिसी बाजार से बिना कंपेयर किए शोरूम से महंगा कार इंश्योरेंस लेके 30,000 रुपए तक गवा बैठे तो उसको ज़ीब्रा नहीं,
गधा कहते हैं।
टेस्टो सोया चांप, टेस्ट मीन्स टेस्टो। अब स्वाद और सेहत एक साथ, नॉन फ्रोजन, नो प्रिजर्वेटिव्स, शुद्ध सोया से बना, प्रोटीन से भरपूर, सेहत का नया स्वाद। सोया चांप, द अल्टीमेट सोर्स ऑफ प्रोटीन, अ पैकेट ऑफ हैप्पीनेस। टेस्टो सोया चांप।
स्माइल।
ना 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 ना, गलत समझ रहे हैं आप, ये ज़ीब्रा नहीं है।
एक्सक्यूज मी।
जब कोई पॉलिसी बाजार से बिना कंपेयर किए शोरूम से महंगा कार इंश्योरेंस लेके 30,000 रुपए तक गवा बैठे तो उसको ज़ीब्रा नहीं,
गधा कहते हैं।
अगर आप बनना चाहते हैं एंकर या फिर आप में है जुनून एक तेज तर्रार न्यूज रिपोर्टर बनने का, तो आप ज्वाइन करें ITV और इंडिया न्यूज Newsx का मीडिया स्कूल। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का कोर्स आपको मौका देता है देश के दिग्गज एंकर्स के साथ काम करने का। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में आप बेहद नजदीकी से देख पाएंगे किस तरह से ITV नेटवर्क के दिग्गज पत्रकारों की टीम दिन रात खबरों पर काम करती है। इस कोर्स के दौरान आप सीखेंगे एंकरिंग की एक एक बारीकी उन एंकर्स के साथ जो देश को रखते हैं हर खबर से बाखबर। ITV नेक्स्ट मीडिया इंटरनेशनल स्कूल का ये कोर्स आपके एंकरिंग स्किल्स को करेगा इतना सशक्त, मजबूत, जिससे आप बनेंगे पत्रकारिता की दुनिया का वो चमकता चेहरा जो दुनिया देखेगी और पसंद करेगी।
कार इंश्योरेंस डन।
पॉलिसी बाजार से कराया?
नहीं।
तो तू ज़ीब्रा नहीं हो सकता। कार नई हो या पुरानी, पॉलिसी बाजार पे कंपेयर करके खरीदो और 30,000 तक बचाओ। इसलिए तू ज़ीब्रा तो नहीं है, तू है
गधा।
काइंड ऑफ।
टेस्टो सोया चांप, टेस्ट मीन्स टेस्टो। अब स्वाद और सेहत एक साथ, नॉन फ्रोजन, नो प्रिजर्वेटिव्स, शुद्ध सोया से बना, प्रोटीन से भरपूर, सेहत का नया स्वाद। सोया चांप, द अल्टीमेट सोर्स ऑफ प्रोटीन, अ पैकेट ऑफ हैप्पीनेस। टेस्टो सोया चांप।
स्माइल।
ना 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 ना, गलत समझ रहे हैं आप, ये ज़ीब्रा नहीं है।
एक्सक्यूज मी।
जब कोई पॉलिसी बाजार से बिना कंपेयर किए शोरूम से महंगा कार इंश्योरेंस लेके 30,000 रुपए तक गवा बैठे तो उसको ज़ीब्रा नहीं,
गधा कहते हैं। कार इंश्योरेंस डन।
पॉलिसी बाजार से कराया?
नहीं।
तो तू ज़ीब्रा नहीं हो सकता। कार नई हो या पुरानी, पॉलिसी बाजार पे कंपेयर करके खरीदो और 30,000 तक बचाओ। इसलिए तू ज़ीब्रा तो नहीं है, तू है
गधा।
काइंड ऑफ।
In the heart of India's growth engine, Gujarat, a quiet revolution is transforming aspirations into achievements. Millions of dreams, once constrained by lack of capital, are now taking flight, powered by a visionary initiative, the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. Launched in 2015, PM Mudra Yojana is a cornerstone of financial inclusion. It's about funding the unfunded, providing collateral-free loans to micro and small enterprises. Since its inception, the PM Mudra Yojana has disbursed over Rs 25.47 lakh crore across more than 44.46 crore loans nationwide. And Gujarat has been a shining example of this success. In Gujarat alone, as of November 2024, over 1.95 crore loan accounts have been opened under the scheme, with a remarkable Rs 19,607 crore sanctioned in 2023-24, marking a 74% increase in loan allocation over 4 years. Loans are categorized into Shishu for up to 50,000 rupees, Kishore for up to 5 lakh rupees and Tarun for up to 10 lakh rupees, ensuring tailored support for every scale of ambition.
મારું નામ પહેરાદ માળી છે. PM મુદ્રા લોન
યોજના માટે લોન માટે જેથી સહાય મળી છે એ અમારી ધંધા રોજગાર સારું ચાલે છે, આવું વિકાસ સારો થાય, ધંધો રોજગાર સારો ચાલે એ માટે નિવેદન છે કે સરકારથી આ યોજનાનો લાભ મળે.
મારું નામ વિશાલ પટેલ છે. અમે પીએમ મુદ્રા યોજના માટે આવેદન કર્યું હતું જેની સહાય મળી છે અને અત્યારે અમારો ધંધો સારો ચાલે છે અને લોકોને હું નિવેદન કરું છું કે સરકાર આવી યોજનાનો લાભ બધા લોકો લે એવી મારું નિવેદન છે.
मेरा नाम शिव कुमार कुशवाहा है. हमने सरकार से पीएम मुद्रा के लिए आवेदन किया था जिसकी हमको सहाय मिला और अभी हमारा धंधा अच्छी तरह से चल रहा है. सरकार के हम अभी आभारी हैं.
मेरा नाम नीलेश कंकरिया है. मैं टेलरिंग का बिजनेस करता हूँ. सरकार की पीएम मुद्रा योजना से काफ़ी लोगों को फ़ायदा हुआ है. मैंने भी आवेदन किया था और मुझे भी सहाय मिली है. अब मैं अच्छा खासा इस धंधे में कमा रहा हूँ और दूसरे लोगों को भी इस पीएम मुद्रा योजना का लाभ मिले उसका निवेदन करता हूँ.
મારું નામ નિકુલ છે. હું રહું છું લવારપુર ગામમાં. મારું ખાતું એસબીઆઈમાં છે. મને જાણકારી મળી હતી કે એસબીઆઈ બેંકમાં મુદ્રા લોન મળશે, તો પછી મેં એપ્લાય કર્યું. મને 10-15 દિવસમાં લોન મળી ગઈ. પછી મેં રિક્ષા લીધી છે. અત્યારે મારે સારું છે.
ઠાકોર જસવંત કુમાર અમરાજી, ગામ લવારપુર, તાલુકો જિલ્લો ગાંધીનગર. મુદ્રા લોન એસબીઆઈ બેંકમાંથી મળેલી છે, લવારપુર શાખા. પીએમ મુદ્રા ની લોન મળેલી છે, રોજગાર ધંધો ઊભો કરી શકે એ લોન મળેલી છે અને મળી શકે, લોકોને મળી શકે.
The Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana is more than just a financial scheme. It's a testament to the government's commitment to empowering every Indian.
बीते 9 वर्षों में भारत सरकार ने मुद्रा योजना के तहत 23 लाख करोड़ रुपए देश के युवाओं को दिए. इस राशि से किसी ने अपना नया व्यापार कारोबार शुरू किया है, किसी ने टैक्सी खरीदी है, किसी ने अपनी दुकान का विस्तार किया है.
Gujarat's leadership has been instrumental in ensuring the effective reach of the scheme, enabling countless citizens to build their futures. The PM Mudra Yojana continues to be a beacon of hope, proving that with trust, support and a little capital, every dream can find its wings, creating a stronger, more prosperous Gujarat and a stronger India.
आज नक्सलवाद भी भारत में अपनी अंतिम सांसें गिन रहा है.
मैं सबसे पहले एक बात इस सदन में जिम्मेदारी के साथ बताना चाहता हूं. 21 मार्च 2026 को इस देश से नक्सलवाद समाप्त.
ये बहुत